Having had this car for a shade over a year now, it's done pretty well. I've done a video on its reliability, and I've done probably about 17,000 miles in this across the course of 1 year. So how much has that cost? Yeah, great question. I've made no secret about the fact I've PCP'd this car. I've got no intention of keeping it. I want to effectively lease a used car. I don't want to buy a brand new Range Rover. The cost of that is extortionate for something of this equivalent, but newer, you're looking at north of 150, 180,000 pounds. This was a fraction of that. I've got no interest in keeping it at the end. I'll move into something new. So, how much has the first year of ownership cost me? Let's go for a drive. Now, if, like me, you like to research things before you dive in with both feet, and I probably become a subject matter expert on some things before I undertake them just through obsessive research, you're probably quite curious as to the real world costs of running a car like this. Now let's not forget, this isn't a brand new car. This is a 2018 model, so this year it's going to be 7 years old. That's quite an age for a car, especially a Range Rover. It's on low mileage for its age. As I'm filming this video, 46,000 miles, of which I've done 16,000 of those. So what is the real world cost of running one of these cars? So before you can take a car on the UK roads, you have to have three basic things in place: insurance, road tax or vehicle excise duty, and an MOT, Ministry of Transport test, if your vehicle's over 3 years old, that is. So you need all three of those things in place before you can even start the wheels turning on this car. So for 1 year's of insurance, in this car for me, a male living in the south of England, 33 years old, just a shade over £1,200 for the year. Now that is a little bit inflated over what other people might experience. I'll tell you why. I do have business use on this. I do travel for work. I do have Mrs. GB on the car, and she's, well, at the time we got this, she was 28, nearly 29. So fairly young lady there on what is an expensive car. And I've also bolted on things like legal protection. Not a courtesy car, but all those things do contribute to the cost of insurance. Now, if you want a further breakdown on the insurance, I have done a video on that, check that out, and I'll dive into more detail in that on the cost of insuring the car. But for the purposes of this video, shade over £1,200 for the year on insurance. Now the next thing is road tax. Now, you can't go on the roads without it, we've covered that. And 1 year's road tax in this car, I'll put that figure down the bottom, and then we'll add it to our running total. But ultimately, it's a 3 litre V6 diesel, burning fossilised prawns at a rate of knots. It's not exactly a Prius, it's not very economical, and it sees probably at best about 35 mpg on a run on the motorway, which is quite a nice segue into the cost of fuel. Now, we've done 16,000 miles in this car. If I take a pump price of £1.50 a litre for those in the UK, I don't know what that is in gallons for our friends across the pond, £1.50 a litre by an average of 35 mpg, it gives us that figure spent on fuel down the bottom there in the space of 1 year. Now, you could probably do some pretty easy maths and work out what that equates to per 1,000 miles and then translate that to what you anticipate it being. But ultimately, that's how much we've spent on fuel as a rule of average in the space of 1 year. Now, there's an argument to be said. Some of that will be subsidised for work travel. I'll claim my mileage back. But this car has spent that much fuel in the space of a year. Now, we're approaching the end of a year's ownership, so it's probably fair that we factor in the cost of an MOT test. They're fixed in the UK. I think it's £55 or £45. I'll put it down the bottom. That's a fixed price. That's set by the Ministry of Transport. Garages can't influence that. They have to sell it at that price. So bolt that price on top. Now let's talk about repairs. So, if you've watched my video on Range Rover reliability, you'll know that this has had a couple of things go wrong in it. Nothing drastic, but certainly more than none. And they've been repaired. Now, luckily, they were under warranty, and they were covered by the dealership that I bought the car from. However, had I not had those repairs covered by the warranty, that would have cost me in excess of £2,500. I'll put the figure down the bottom, but in excess of £2,500 parts and labour to repair those parts. That's in the space of 1 year. So that's a consideration to make. Either get an extended warranty or be prepared that you might have some costs coming down the road. Now, there is one thing still broken with this car that I need to fix. It's the window regulator. It broke whilst we're on holiday. I haven't yet got round to replacing it. The passenger just can't have fresh air at this point in time. We'll get there. And that should be a relatively easy fix. I think it's about £120 for a used window regulator off of eBay. So I'll be taking a look at that shortly. So for the purposes of this, to give it a fair and reflective cost, it did break within the first year. I just haven't got round to repairing it. So let's add the cost of that window regulator on also. Now, in terms of modifications, I haven't really done anything to this car, not like the F-Type. I've put in a wireless CarPlay box, but I had that knocking around, so that's not really a cost of running the car year one. I haven't had it detailed yet. I haven't had it ceramic coated. That's something I need to do, so that hasn't been a cost in year one. And I did vinyl wrap the wing mirrors to match the F-Type, which I had the vinyl lying around. That's not really a reflective cost of running the car, so I won't include the cost of that in today's calculation. Now, I've been quite fortunate. When I got the car, it did have a new set of tyres already fitted. However, if I didn't have those tyres fitted and it required a set, for some mid-range, I'm not a believer in cheap tyres. It's your only contact point with the road. But so for some mid-range tyres, because of the profile of these wheels, they're 22-inch wheels, you'd be looking at just a shade over £1,250 for a full set of tyres. So whilst I'm not going to factor it as a cost of the first year's running cost of this car, do be aware that if you need to put a set of tyres on, you're going to be in for quite an activity there. Now, being a Euro 6 diesel engine, I've had to put AdBlue in this twice. Negligible. I think that came in a shade under £20 per top up. I do that at the pump at the forecourt rather than buying it in bottles, so I can get the exact amount in. And I'll put the exact cost of that down the bottom there. But 2 instances of filling up with AdBlue, which isn't unreasonable in 16,000 miles. And it's also had one service. Now, I went to the main dealer for that. I'm a firm believer on luxury vehicles, if you want to call them that, but certainly a car that came out the factory new with this price tag. I'm a firm believer of keeping the main dealer stamp in your book for the service history. I think it just helps with residual value and also its saleability and marketability when you come to move it on. So if you book online via the Land Rover website rather than going straight to your franchise dealer of choice, it is a little bit cheaper. So I booked that online, and that cost me just a shade over £250. I'll put the exact figure down the bottom there again for what the service was. Now, that was just oil and filter, so that was a fairly minor service. If we were talking about glow plugs, not spark plugs, it's a diesel, so glow plugs, fuel filters, cabin filters, it does start racking up quite a bit, especially when you start looking at things like timing chains. Replacing those, your servicing bills can quite easily breach the £2,000 mark. So for me, quite fortunately, this time round, it was a minor service, oil and filter, that came in at that figure down the bottom, which is pretty ideal. All said and told, that's not a bad run. Yes, it's had its problems this year. No, I'm not I'm not going to get on my soapbox and start rattling on about those failures and faults. I've already done that once in a video. Go and check out the reliability video. So for year one costs of running this car, I really don't think that's too shabby. And of course, let's not forget the actual cost of the car. As I said earlier, I've made no secret about the fact I don't own this car, I don't intend to own this car, I don't want to own this car. I'm effectively leasing a used vehicle. For me to go and lease a brand new Range Rover, I wouldn't get any change out of £1,800 a month on a 3-year contract. I'm not interested in that. Jump into something a little bit older, PCP it, personal contract purchase for those that aren't familiar, and you're effectively leasing a used car. Now at the end of that 3-year term, which is what I've taken out, 3 years, I can choose to pay a balloon payment and own the car outright, or I can just hand the car back to the finance company or sell it privately, pay off that balloon payment and walk away from it, which is exactly what I will do. Anyhow, there's a monthly cost associated to a PCP, unfortunately. We've got to make the world go round, and money does that. So the monthly cost of the PCP on this car is £536.01. Don't forget the penny. So that multiplied across 12 months, we'll add it onto our figure, gives us this total. Now all said and told, for 1 year of motoring in this car, I don't think that's a bad figure. I need to remember, technically I get a car allowance at work, so if you're in a similar position and you have one of those things, it offsets the cost straight there. Also, a large amount of that fuel, not all of it, but a portion of that fuel cost has been offset by mileage claims, which technically, if you're reimbursed at the 45p a mile, which is recommended by HMRC, should go towards covering wear and tear, insurance, and generally running the car also. It's been heavily subsidised in that fact as well. But let's not shy away from the fact either, it's still quite a chunk of money. So if you are looking to get into one of these, hopefully this goes some way into explaining the real world costs behind running one of these as your daily. Would I do it again? Well, yeah, I need to do it for another 2 years. I've got 2 years of a PCP left on this car, but that doesn't upset me. It's a comfortable car, it's a lovely place to be, and I'm very fortunate to have it, I suppose, and I do enjoy driving it. So I'm looking forward to the next 2 years. Give it another year, I'll probably start getting itchy feet and looking at what I can move into, but for now, I'm just going to enjoy it. Fingers crossed for another year of motoring with the same fortune of minimised costs. I'll do an update at the 2-year mark, see if we've seen an increase in operating costs in that 2nd year. It makes sense that as the car gets older, and let's remember, this is 7, turning 8, you're probably going to start seeing a few more things creeping in that need a bit of money applying to them. So we'll see what happens over the course of the next year. Hopefully this has been beneficial in helping you on your journey and understanding a bit about how it actually looks to run one of these. And if you're not already, please do hit that sub button down below and stick around for some more content in the same theme. But anyway, that's it for another week, guys. I'll catch you in the next video. Peace. I'll tell you the biggest cost of this year. I think it's going to end up being my sanity. The rattles in this car. Honestly, everything is so over-engineered and British engineered. Everything's got motors in it. Like the seats are adjustable. I think they're like 11-way adjustable seats. The headrests have motors in them. The rear seats are adjustable. The blinds, it's got blinds on the windows. The steering wheel adjusts on motors. And as things get shaken down, they become a bit loose. It just rattles too much. And I probably need to spend a bit of time applied into fixing some of those rattles for my own sanity. Good God. Oh, there's a new rattle now. Did you hear that? I think it's the door card. I'm going to have to do a nut and bolt rebuild on this car, I think.